If you're an Android user trying to figure out just who killed Mr. Body, well, perhaps you should check the library or the conservatory.
I bet there's a clue game app.
There's absolutely a clue game app. I would bet pretty much anything on it. But if you're looking for a good way to listen to your podcast, check out the Podcast Republic app on the Google Play Store. There's thousands of good reviews telling you all about it, so you don't have to take my word for it. But you should check it out if you're an Android user. That's the Podcast Republic app on the Google Play Store. If you need a holiday gift for the most important person on your list, I'm talking about yourself, head to patreon.com/dissectingthe80s. If you sign up now at the $5 level, you get 11 plus hours of bonus content. That's commentary tracks, bonus full-length episodes. What you'll also get coming your way in December is a full-length episode on Back to the Future. That's for our December bonus episode, as well as the new Christmas-mentary, which is a little silly gift from us to you of us doing a commentary track for some little piece of pop culture. It won't be a movie, it'll be a little short thing, but those two things together, you're probably looking at a total of around 13 plus hours of content for your Patreon membership. And if you sign up, you get access to all of the back stuff. It's not just like you get the things going forward. So you can go check out all the old Bag of Soups, which has reviews of things that we've liked recently. We've got all the bonus content we talked about there.
A lot of big popular movies
Great Muppet
that people
Caper.
always talk about.
Absolutely. Great Muppet Caper. Dirty Dancing.
Roger Rabbit.
Many, many, many more. So head over to patreon.com/dissectingthe80s and check that out. Welcome to Dissecting the 80s. I am Tripp Lano, one half of the Mega Podcasting Powers. And with me, as always, is the man who did it in the conservatory with a candlestick, the Macho Mandrew.
Andrew Lano. Yeah, I guess.
We're diving into easily the best board game adaptation of all time.
Yeah. I mean,
I say that as one of the many. I'm one of the 9 people who saw a theatrical presentation of Battleship.
Oh, that's right. And isn't the main climax that old men from Vietnam have to?
It's not Vietnam. It's World War II, which makes it even funnier.
Oh boy.
It is one
Picturing
of the most
Rihanna
unintentionally
with
yes
geriatric men
yes
rolling missiles around the ship because they can't pick them up anymore.
It's even better because first of all, it's set to Back in Black. Or no, Thunderstruck, the AC/DC song.
It's a weird,
right?
Okay.
So it's okay. So let's quickly, this 2-minute scene, which you should look up and is available somewhere on the internet, I'm certain. It's we're the only ship left that's functional. Well, this is an antique. It's a museum. And then all the old guys who are there being honored are we know how to make her sing. And it's thunder. So it's Thunderstruck,
yeah,
right? It's crazy guitar, big stomps. So wait. So it becomes men who are 80 plus years old who are genuinely, and this is not I'm not clowning on people for being old.
Are they real veterans?
Unable to move well. They're actual veterans. Yes. Yes. People who made big sacrifices, but the clowning on this is the filmmaker who decided to be you know what the perfect climax is? We'll have a bunch of people who are at the age where they're genuinely not moving well anymore. They're all pretty healthy, but they're all struggling their balance isn't what it used to be, all those things. We're gonna score it to this penis rock AC/DC song, and then we're gonna have them slowly shuffling and doing things taking off the rope, the divider rope that prevents you from getting into the area. And then they, at one point, you said, that the missile carrying mechanism is non-functional. And so they're there's only one missile left. We got to get it to the other side of the ship. And so all of these old men and all of the young people too, everybody puts a shoulder on this thing and they carry it thousands of pounds warhead. They carry very slowly across the boat.
Are they fighting other people or are they fighting aliens?
Aliens.
Okay, I thought it was aliens. Are there, so what other board games are there?
So when Battleship there's also 2 Ouija movies, which was licensed.
Oh,
Ouija
I
movies.
forgot. I feel like that. I guess Ouija's technically a board game.
Oh, this is not a technical. Like, it is a licensed board game.
I mean, I guess
movie.
Ouija, where they purchased the license from, I guess that technically is a board game.
The second one of those is actually quite entertaining. It's by Mike Flanagan.
Oh, I love him.
The Hill House guy. Yeah, I think it's better than it has any right to be. It's the sequel, but they originally, there was a deal that was, I believe, 4 board games, Battleship and Ouija being, is it Ouija or Ouija? I never know.
So technically
Ouija.
it is oui and ja, which is French and German for yes and yes. So like Ouija, I guess technically,
Okay.
but I don't know.
Okay. I believe the other 2 in that deal, and this is going back like 15 years, one of them I think was, well, I'm almost positive was Candyland.
Which, like, how has that not been a movie yet?
Right. That seems like a no-brainer. But I don't know of any other board game adaptations. Certainly there have been the opposite direction, like the board game version of the movie.
Yes.
But I don't know how many gone the other way. They've never gotten the D&D game.
Like, you would think, like,
D&D
Candyland
movie
to me,
out.
if you think about, like, like, board games, Candyland is the first one, like, yeah, it's bright and colorful. It's just kids going through a candy forest to a castle. Like, it's a no-brainer.
It's got all sorts of weird muckety-muck monsters on it.
Yeah, there's no...
It's a no-brainer.
I don't get why that has taken so long.
Yeah, I don't know why that one is the one that went into development hell, but it is.
Have you ever seen... So there was this, like... Someone did, like, the dark and gritty posters for childhood board games as movies. And...
I have seen
the
this,
Hungry
yes.
Hungry Hippos one is my favorite.
Yeah, I would watch that.
I would watch... Well, because it was, like... It was basically, like, similar to a Jaws-style poster where it's, like, the hippo coming from underneath and, like, crashing through the boat. The, like, Jungle Cruise-looking boat. And, like, everyone's flying in the air.
I would absolutely, I would watch that. I'm sorry to say I would watch that.
I would watch the hell out of that. But it's just so funny that Clue is the first board game adaptation when it is ostensibly one of the only board games that, like, is replayable because it's different every time. There's not one singular, like, linear plot to it.
Right. The other thing with Clue is that the board game is not very good.
I love Clue.
Oh, have you played it recently?
Yeah, Jack and I played it.
Okay. I find Clue to be so tedious. It's just like endless circuits around the board to get the clues, and it seems to take a long, long time. I'm not a big Clue fan.
Oh, I also have the Golden Girls Clue, which is who ate the last slice of cheesecake.
Apparently there was a Dungeons and Dragons movie 20 years ago that I have no memory of.
Wow, I've never heard of that.
And then this list also includes Jumanji, but I would say that was
reverse.
Exactly. And apparently they made a Warhammer movie 10 years ago that
What's Warhammer?
is
Isn't Warhammer like a computer game?
No, I mean maybe it was as well, but Warhammer was like figurines on a table.
Oh, I was thinking
like
of
military
Warcraft.
combat. Yeah. Anyway, we watched Clue from 1985, another 35th anniversary. So you know what that means.
We gotta go back. We gotta go dissect the 80s. It's your movie concept that shouldn't work. Something's gotta be about your movie concept that shouldn't work.
When the mega powers explode.
I'm talking about the 80s. Oh, yeah.
Great Scott!
Cream of the crop. Oh, yeah.
Mega powers, yeah!
When this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see some serious shit.
So let me ask this question to start off.
Am I obsessed with this
What-
movie? Yes.
Well, that I figured would come up in due time, but what year does this movie take place?
So I think technically it takes place in 1954 because they're listening to a very specific. Or no, so in the kitchen, the cook, when she's doing the thing in the beginning, she's like sharpening her knife, and Tim Curry comes in. She's watching something on TV that was broadcast in 1954. I want to say. So technically speaking, it
Interesting.
is squarely in the 50s. It's just sort of like timeless.
Okay, because I honestly was trying to figure it out based on the clothes. And then I was like, well, they're all wearing kind of elaborate outfits to try to disguise themselves. 50s never even entered the idea. I thought it was genuinely set at the time period it came out, and it was just an old house.
Oh, no. It's the 50s. That's why there's Russia, and there's communism, and...
Well, that stuff persisted for a long time.
Yeah, but I don't think 85 was, they were like, they were going to report me to the House Un-American Activities Committee in 85.
Well, the thing is, so okay, 85 probably would have been a dumb guess, but like you could have been talking 10 years after about the fact that you were you were afraid of this and why the blackmail started, I think is the thing. So it's good to know that I was way off. I did not know or did not remember that Deborah Hill, producer who was alongside John Carpenter, responsible for the creation of Halloween, among many other things. And I also didn't know that Landis had a story credit on this, which is interesting.
It's also always, I've like always wait for the day where it like comes out in some like BuzzFeed article that like Mel Brooks actually ghost wrote this movie, because it is the most Mel Brooksy non-Mel Brooks movie I've ever seen.
Yeah, it certainly shares a lot of elements with Mel Brooks. I think this is a different kind of funny, though. This really strikes me as, and I don't think it's improv, but it strikes me as really, really good improv.
I agree. Like there's only one improv line in this whole movie.
Yeah.
And we'll get to it if you don't know what line it is.
No, I don't. You know 500 times more than I do about this movie. I decided to do no research because I was like, he'll know the answer to almost all of these questions.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite movies ever. Like top 5, I top 10 for sure, maybe even top 5. I think.
So where did you come to it? Because I used to watch this pretty regularly because it was nonstop on Comedy Central.
I remember catching it in bits and pieces on Comedy Central and being like, this is, I want to know more about this. And then I think I watched it in high school, and then in college. So it's a very campy movie. So like the queer community really soaks it in. Like a lot of times, like if your local town, when in the after times, when we go back to normal, if there's like a drag queen hosting a movie night about like gay movies, chances are Clue will come up at some point. So like the theater department really glommed on it. So we watched it like once a year in one of our movie nights. And it was just this, I could tell like this is funny. I don't get everything, but like I get that this is great when I was like younger. And so I just kind of like glommed onto it.
This is one of those types of funny movies that people quote the lines out of context to. And that type of referential humor is like wide. We do that kind of stuff too. Mm-hmm. But I feel that this is one of the types of ones that it's like almost never out of context are the lines in this funny. And the only reason it's going to land is if the person you are saying it to has also seen Clue and gets it. Because if you're like, I have done the like 1 + 2 + 1, 1 + 2 + 2 + 1 plus, like I've done that before.
I do flames on the side of my face 3 times a month.
Right. And the movie is so tightly written, and the script is so important to this movie, and the execution of it is so important to this movie that all these lines become very, very quotable. But it's funny the way that this one in particular, like what I'm trying to say is like on their own, out of context, almost none of these lines are funny, and yet in the context of the movie, hysterical.
I can see that. I think they're funny, but they definitely don't carry the same water as like in their true context. Because there's a few things that I think like you can just take the line and like, oh, I would chuckle, like I would breathe out my nose a little harder at that.
Like flames on the side of my face is a perfect example to me because that's all in the performance.
Mm-hmm.
Like people use that GIF and stuff of
Flame?
Madeline Kahn, like, thank you. Yeah. Like with her hands near her cheeks. But the line is hysterical in the movie because of her amazing performance. But if you were just to say like flames on the side of my face, it doesn't quite land right. Like it's so much of this stuff.
If I'm quoting this movie, it's a full body performance. Like flames on the side of my face, heaving breath. Like I get into it. So maybe that's their difference. Right.
But I'm saying if someone watches you do that and they have never seen Clue, they're not going to think it's funny.
I guess that's true.
That's what I'm trying to say. It's like I feel that, and I often feel that like an out of context movie line just tossed off to somebody is also sometimes deeply not funny. But this movie is endlessly quotable and also complete gibberish to people if you say it. And I'm notorious for this. If anyone ever mentions the country of Bolivia, I in my head at minimum am like, next time I say let's go someplace like Bolivia, let's go someplace like Bolivia from Butch Cassidy. And it's like, that is just in my brain, Bolivia makes that connection. But it's like, no one knows what the hell I'm talking about. And even if they do, what are you saying, kid?
Yeah.
So this movie, I was texting you while watching it going like, I am genuinely struggling to take notes because they talk so fast.
I think that's why I love it, is that it's so tight and fast, and it's an amazing cast. Like truly the only complaint you can level against this movie is that it's very white. But like,
yeah, I mean,
but like it is brilliantly edited. It is brilliantly acted. Every actor is like hitting their mark and here for it and like elevating. It's one of those, because a lot of times, I think we talked about this in like Beetlejuice, where like normally one actor's kind of like, oh, I'm the one that you're all kind of like reaching towards. It's a very much, like you said, improv, yes, and where it feels like every actor is like, oh, well, I'm gonna climb the next step, and then Madeline Kahn's like, I'm gonna go up one more step, and they all kind of like work together to get higher. Right,
and I do think a lot of the people in this movie, like, wasn't Michael McKean in that Canadian crew who was it SCTV? I know he was in Spinal Tap, like the Rob Reiner stuff, but he might have also done that there.
And that's Mr.
But
Green,
I feel that
right?
most of these, the one who spoiler alert,
the motorist
is the FBI guy.
At the very end?
Who's no, he reveals his identity at the very end.
Yeah, the Kingdom of Heaven. Oh, Mr. Green.
I don't remember what his character was in the movie. He's not Colonel Mustard.
Yeah, that's Mr. Green.
Okay.
Mr. Green, Colonel Mustard.
Well, his jacket's not green.
None of them are wearing their colors, Tripp. That's the point.
Okay. Well, Peacock is wearing a peacock feather on her head, and Mrs. White has a big white jacket she takes off. I would say that that's not true.
But she wears black, Scarlet wears green, Peacock wears gold. It's like no one's really wearing their colors. All their cars match their colors, but none of their clothing does.
All right, well, we'll go through the movie now because we're 20 minutes into this podcast and haven't.
It's going to be long-winded because I fucking love this movie.
Directed by Jonathan Lynn, who also directed My Cousin Vinny, another fabulous movie that I was just recently watching when I was up at Mom and Dad's and was like, oh man, this is really fun. And then I remembered like, 92, 93, Marissa Tomei, this isn't an 80s movie. Damn it. Like it was like, oh, this could be an episode.
Now I'm just picturing like how much worse this movie would be with, instead of Tim Curry, it was Joe Pesci as Wadsworth.
I disagree that it would be worse.
Oh, it would be
it would be different.
Movie.
I would be different. I don't know. I think you underestimate Joe Pesci's comedic sensibilities.
No, I don't think he's not funny.
Yesterday.
I don't think his funny elevates this movie the same way Tim Curry's does.
I don't disagree that Tim Curry is perfect here. I'm just saying, I don't know that it's 10% worse with Joe Pesci. It's different, but I don't know if it's 10% worse.
I think he's funny. I don't think his funny vibes with Clue.
I don't disagree with you, but I'm saying there is a good version of Clue with Joe Pesci in this role, is all I'm saying. It exists. I believe he is a ferociously underrated actor. I think he doesn't get nearly the credit. Yeah. Like, the only thing watchable about Irishman is Joe Pesci, in my opinion.
Bother.
Well, you don't like Scorsese. You haven't seen any of his movies.
I think
to start with, The Irishman would be the equivalent of watching like, geez Louise, I can't even think of a proper. It'd be the equivalent of jumping in on the second to last episode of Game of Thrones and being like, all right, let's see what we got here. And I don't watch Game of Thrones, but I just feel that is true.
Well, I think it's more that I've just never seen a Scorsese movie, but they always
that's what I said.
They always seem to take themselves very seriously, and like it always feels like more drama, less comedy. And
they're not comedy.
I know, and like I don't often want that.
They're brilliant movies about bad people who don't think they're bad people. It's like they're notorious for, in the same way that people watch Scarface and are just like, Tony Montana's a cool guy. It's like, no, you're missing the point. You're missing the point very, very, very aggressively. Like, people love the characters in Goodfellas and they think they're like these cool guys. It's like, they're all the worst
people. Is Goodfellas
people.
the one with the razor blade and the garlic? He's cutting garlic with a razor blade? Okay.
Yeah.
I think I've seen
We're gonna
clips
get-
of Scorsese. I've never seen a full Scorsese.
We're gonna get so many tweets just like last week when I found out that you hadn't seen what was it?
I don't remember.
I sent you a picture. Jimmy Stewart.
I have seen Mr. Smith. Yeah, I have seen Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. We watched it in like an AP government class. I just never think about Jimmy Stewart, I guess.
I'm doing a filibuster.
Yeah.
You can't stop me.
Well, 'cause
I'm reading Encyclopedia Britannica.
A friend of mine told me, I think it was a Jimmy Stewart movie, about these guys. This guy murders a guy and like puts his body in a trunk and has a dinner. Like there's a dinner party that's like scheduled and like going to be happening, and he murders his friend and like stuffs him in the trunk, and everyone shows up and like, where's the guy? And he has to like pretend all night, and I'm pretty sure it's Jimmy Stewart.
The way you're describing that is not ringing a bell to me, although I'm sure I'm going to find out it's a movie I've seen twice.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to Clue.
I love the score.
So
it's a great score.
Great music. This opening is very foreboding, and I really like the tone that it sets, which is, I think, the opposite of what the comedy later is, but is important for sort of scene setting purposes.
Yeah. I think it works because to the characters, it is life or death. So it's sort of like putting you there, even though it is this heightened nonsense reality.
So we get Tim Curry doing last minute preparations for people's arrival. He throws some meat to some dogs, which is kind of good, a good little bit. And then the arrivals begin. People coming up the house one by one. The house is specifically referred to in dialogue as Hill House, which I thought was really interesting. Because that book had been out for years at that point. So plus there's the House on Haunted Hill, which is a different thing, but also evocative.
Yeah, I was going to say there's so many Hill Houses.
And I started at this point, I was like trying to write down, good dialogue from this movie. And then I was like, you might as well just do a script reading instead
That's what
of review.
I realized
that
like maybe a quarter of my notes are just like a version of the quote to jog my memory so I can like remember how much I love certain lines.
Right. This one is one of my favorites and one that I hadn't remembered, but the why is the car stopped?
It's frightened
is very good. So we roll in. We got the usual suspects from A Game of Clue. You're all familiar with Mrs. Peacock and Mrs. Scarlet.
So I have to say, I think the women, other than Tim Curry, the women in this movie far outshine the men.
They get a lot more to do, which is extremely unusual for a movie of this era.
And I love Mrs. Peacock's outfit. No, Miss Scarlet's outfit. She comes in this like alien queen collar. It like stands up at least 6 to 8 inches around her head. And it's this like gorgeous green. And then she has this like slinky little green dress with like a little, almost like a boa wrap thing. She's so sultry and so glamorous. I love her because she's also like a sarcastic bitch.
And Tim Curry is the butler, so he's greeting all these people. There's a good bit of business with, is it when Martin Mull arrives or Michael McKean, where he's trying to tell him his real name? And Tim
it's because
like,
Martin Mull's the first person to arrive. So they have to like establish that like these aren't their real names, these are fake names.
Right. Because they are pretty goofy names. And I will say, in terms of adaptation, they took 3 parts of Clue that would be not really, there are only a few parts of Clue I think you could realistically lift to become part of the movie, and that's the character names, the weapons, and the house, because that's all there is to the game of Clue.
Yeah.
There's no there's nothing beyond
and
that.
a murder.
Yes, of course, yes. Or a missing piece of cheesecake, as it were.
Yeah.
But despite that, it doesn't feel bogged down. It doesn't feel corny. The part that would feel the corniest, I think, is when they get the weapons later. And to me, it doesn't feel corny because of the way they do it, which is very specific in the box shapes, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah, because I feel like if it was like they all were like alone in separate rooms, and like someone found a candle and like someone reaches under the sink and pulls out a pipe, and it like that would be stupid. But it's all very heightened and camp and drama.
Right. So we all get in the house. You get the usual suspects here, and just a truly amazing performance, top to bottom, from the cast. But obviously, Tim Curry is the straw that stirs the drink in this case.
He is. It's. I think this might be my favorite Tim Curry performance.
It's definitely mine.
It's so invested and lived in, and dedicated. It feels like he's there, and you're like, oh, yes.
It feels as if he got this script 6 months prior and then spent the next 6 months learning every.
It feels like he wrote it. It feels like
lines.
it's so with ingrained that he's like, oh no, I wrote like this. I wrote it. That's why I get it.
Yeah, but beyond that, it feels like he could do everyone's lines.
Mm-hmm.
Because at some points he kind of does. At the end of the movie, he kind of does do everyone's
The
lines.
last like 20 minutes of him or so of him recapping everything is brilliant.
Mm-hmm. So we get down to dinner and we have a slurp off.
It's so
of soup.
great.
And it's just heightening the absurdity of this room where these people don't know each other. Their host isn't there to explain why they're all at the same party. And so it heightens the awkwardness and the awkward silence of chewing sounds.
Christopher Lloyd first. And then Madeline Kahn kind of gives him a side eye, and it's like, well, I guess okay. And then also gives a... And so it's just them back and forth, and cut to the other side of the table, spoon halfway to the mouth, jaw dropped, like, what?
Yeah, it's excellent stuff. And Christopher Lloyd, I'm glad you said his name, because I want to talk about that too. He is so different from type in this movie, and yet still so good. Because the two Christopher Lloyd performances I go to in my head, and there are many great ones, but obviously Doc Brown, no brainer, and the other one being The Dip.
Oh, Judge Doom.
Judge Doom, thank you. They're both of a similar
ilk
sort of origin. You know what I mean? Would you it's like they're very big performances. They're playing to the last row. This one way more compressed, but still fabulous. Like really shows his range as an actor.
I think it feels like they were like, hey, gents, you three have to play to the front row because we got Madeline Kahn, Eileen Brennan, and Leslie Ann Warren playing for the check cashing place down the street. You can't all six do it.
And meanwhile, Tim Curry is playing for Near Pluto.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Tim Curry can be seen from space.
Tim Curry can be seen from distant galaxies that aren't even adjacent to this one. So we do dinner and we're all sitting around the table. And at this point, I'm like, I haven't seen Clue in at least 10 years. It might be 15, honestly. Yeah, a really long time for me. And it's funny, I remembered liking it, but never went back and revisited. And I was enjoying this so much because, one, I really enjoy parlor mysteries, but the only parlor mysteries that really get made and are out there are very old Agatha Christie and...
Agatha Christie's great, though, man.
No. I'm saying the adaptations are old.
Oh,
so it's like actors I'm unfamiliar with, done in a style I don't super care for.
There's the new one.
Slow. I think
the new one's coming soon, right? Is that
so? I tried to watch that Murder on the Orient Express with Kenneth Branagh.
It was so good.
It didn't do it for me.
Really?
It didn't do it for me. Yeah, no. Like Knives Out really blew my hair back. And so I had watched that and I was like, you were talking about how much you like Murder on the Orient Express. I was like, all right. So it might have just been that I had just watched Knives Out.
Very
and it
different.
Was bad timing. Yeah,
It's similar in that you have to pay attention to everything. Like you need to absorb literally everything on the screen at every second. But it's very different than that. You know what I mean?
Right. And it's Poirot. It's like a different style entirely to, Daniel Radcliffe, Daniel Craig's sawed off foghorn leghorn business, all that. So it was different, but it didn't hit for me at the moment. But I loved Agatha Christie.
We saw the Mousetrap.
I love Sherlock Holmes. Yeah. So Mousetrap I found super, super fun, but Mousetrap felt very Clue-like to me because they're sort of set in the same period. Mm-hmm. Actually, the other thing I was thinking of while watching this, in addition to it reminding me of the time we saw Mousetrap, was how much the style of this reminded me of the play you directed. The name I never remember. Noise is Off. I got there just at the same time. But the style of the comedy is that like sort of French door farce.
Yeah, it's
business.
it is not a word is wasted. Not an inch of that script is fluff.
It's something I really enjoy, but something I only want to have on rare occasions because it's like, cumin, right? Like you want some cumin in your dish, but you don't want to eat a bowl of cumin. That's sort of how I feel about it.
Fair. Similarly in comedy, if you want something fun to check out, I think it's still on YouTube. It's Peter Pan Goes Wrong. There's a series of plays called The Play That Goes Wrong. And some of them are like actual, like, they take Peter Pan, they take Christmas Carol, and then sometimes they like write original plays that go wrong. And their marketing is great because all of the posters are cut off, or like the typeface is completely wrong, and it's just like, you're like, you're saying like, wow, who screwed that up? And then you're like, oh, it's the play that goes wrong. And it's an hour and a half, I want to say, of like everything that can go, like, it's this brilliantly choreographed routine of like, this isn't real, that's real, there's someone breaks through the door, so the bunk beds fall down. It is a treat.
Nice. I'll have to look that up. I think I saw that recently in like YouTube suggestions or something like that.
Probably. Did you catch where Christopher Lloyd? So they all it starts to trickle out little by little bits of information about who they really are, because they've been all told like, don't discuss. You're given a pseudonym, like no one knows who you are, and so they're all sort of slowly figuring out little things, like letting slip, like, oh, I'm the wife of a, and then she cuts herself off, and you find out she's the wife of a senator. Did you catch where Christopher Lloyd works?
Yeah, he works for the UN.
No, he works for you know who. The United Nations Organization, World Health Organization.
Oh, yes. So we do all this business. Everybody starts to reveal like, oh, what do you do? What do you do? And it learns, oh, we all work in Washington and are connected there in some way. That must be why we're here. And then in strolls Leaving, who, well, let me hit that better. Leaving into the movie as the titular, or not titular, but the Mr. Body. And you, if you're a listener of this show, would recognize him from Flashdance, also available on our Patreon page, as well as Streets of Fire.
But not his voice.
It's not his voice in Flashdance? Really? Who dubs him?
That I don't know offhand, but I do know that I don't remember why they did it, but they dubbed his voiceover. I'm also
I completely didn't notice it, and I feel like I noticed those things more than the average person.
That's weird, because yeah, it feels slightly off, like ever so slightly. But apparently he was only cast because his name is Leaving.
That's funny. He's also a member of the band Fear, who I mostly know because they got kicked off SNL permanently after they almost destroyed the set in the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, he distributes a bunch of letters, and they all lay out what people are being blackmailed for, and Tim Curry starts reading them, out to everybody, explaining what the business is, and then Michael McKean jumps in and is like, well, my letter's in there because I'm a homosexual, and that would be a huge problem at the State Department.
Because it's 1954.
Right.
And so, like, everyone... I also like that, like, I appreciate that punchline, because it's not, like, as gross as I feel like other movies of the 80s would have made that punchline. Because, like, he sits back down and Christopher Lloyd instantly gets up and, like, walks away from him. And I'm like, okay, sure, that's kind of funny.
Yeah. And that's sort of the extent of it.
Yeah, there's little sprinkles of his homosexuality throughout this movie, and you have to be eagle-eyed and catch them.
Oh, I more meant the homophobia thing.
Oh.
There's not a lot more homophobic stuff in the movie.
Yeah, no, it's more just like, hey, he's gay. Remember that?
Yeah. Keep this in mind for later. I also really like the bit where Mr. Body tries to leave. Tim Curry's chasing him, and he gets to the garden, or the conservatory in the board game. Yeah. And he goes to smash a window, and the big Dobermans come up like, arr!
Yeah, that was fun.
Like, well, I fed them earlier, and now they've come back around as Chekhov's Doberman.
A real quick use of that. And the Miss Scarlet, because they're all like saying like, oh, I didn't do this. I'm being blackmailed, but I didn't do it. And Miss Scarlet goes, well, what did she say? She goes, not me. And they go, you're not being blackmailed? She's like, no, I'm being blackmailed, but I did it. And she says, I run a specialized hotel and telephone service that connects men with the company of a young lady for a short while.
I really enjoy the one for Mrs. White where they talk about beheading and I guess penising. I don't know what the term would be.
Castration?
There you go. I like penising, but all of the men crossing their legs simultaneously after that.
He was found without
really
his head and his,
business.
and she like points south, and there's all three men on the couch, like slowly cross their legs. It's great.
It's the same leg in the same direction. It's all really well directed.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly think there are a bunch of parts of this movie that have choreography. I guess it's blocking technically because you're not talking about dance, but the blocking is so intense.
It's choreography
it's
at
like
this point.
Dance. Yeah, I mean, that's what I was trying to say. Is it's the blocking is so complicated that it's basically choreographed movement, and it's wildly impressive. The synchronicity of people and the because a lot of the last third of this movie is literally the entire cast running left to right across your screen
And
for 30
repeating
minutes.
things.
Right.
I think what's great is that it's almost like a musical. Like the dialogue is so fast that you kind of have to treat it like a song and find the rhythm and find the where the cadence would go. Because so many of these jokes only work because they are like because they're layered and almost on top of each other, but just shy. Yeah,
I have to imagine there were many takes of many of these scenes because the dialogue is so complicated and the takes are done, or the performances are so fast. It just seems like you'd really struggle with a lot of this.
One of my favorites is when Madeline Kahn talks about her late husband, and she says, he threatened to kill me in public. And Miss Carla goes, why would he want to kill you in public?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of jokes in this that I recognize as like, oh, there's a piece of your sense of humor. There's a piece of your sense of humor.
It's a matter of life after death.
This was
after
on.
he died, I had a life.
This movie was on Comedy Central every single afternoon. Basically, it must have cost nothing to license.
Well, it tanked. It tanked.
Right. Well, I will say the idea of having to go to the movies 3 times to get all 3 endings, I think sounds rad as hell. But an execution sounds torturous.
I don't think that was the point. They didn't want you to go 3 times. Because it wasn't like your movie theater got through. They were like, they sent ending A to the Northeast. They sent ending B to the Midwest.
Oh, that's not the way I interpreted it from reading it online.
Oh, I was under the impression that it was like the theater didn't know what version they got.
No, because your ticket said version A, version B, or version C.
I didn't hear that. Where was that?
On the Wikipedia.
Oh, I don't remember reading that.
So let me pull up this. Oh man, is it dead? So I can't find the Ebert review. It's not coming up, but it says some theaters announced which ending the viewers would see. And I feel like I've seen pictures of the Clue theater listing that had C ending A.
Oh, I had never heard that.
Because to me, it seems like, yes, it's a creative thing that people, somebody like us could be like, oh man, this is so cool. This is a cool idea. And then the studio heads are like, yeah, and they have to go see it 3 times. Chomp, 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 chomp on the cigar.
Yeah, I think people just didn't get it, and then but can you imagine if you didn't realize that? Because I always heard about it as like they didn't realize there were different endings. So like you could pick up a New York Times and read the like, oh, I saw that Clue movie this weekend, and then like you're like, that didn't happen when I saw the movie.
Yeah, I think that would have potentially happened if they weren't really aggressive about explaining that stuff, which leads me to believe that I think they did. I'm trying to find it while we're talking here because I want to be more accurate, but I swear that I have read about this before, and there were theater listings that explained. But yeah, this was a huge. It did not make its budget back. It was a big failure.
It's a shame because it is like heavy hitters in the comedy world, and they're all firing.
Yeah, no,
cylinders.
It's a bunch of big names.
So basically, Wadsworth, Tim Curry, reveals that he's the one who invited everyone because Mr. Body is blackmailing them all, and he's like, we can all join together and fight him. And so Mr. Body gets his beautiful like crocodile skin suitcase from the hall and hands out the black boxes, and inside each box is one of the classic Clue weapons. And he's like, basically, the only people who know anything are us in this room. So if we kill Wadsworth, we don't have to say anything to the police when they show up in 45 minutes. So take your pick. And he turns off the lights. Lights come back on, and he's dead.
So this is the quote from Ebert. I found it. My obligation now is to tell you which of the 3 endings you should try to see, but that will be harder than it sounds. I was informed that newspaper ads for the movies will contain the letters A, B, or C, denoting which ending is being shown.
Oh, yeah, I had never heard that.
And then the other thing is this quote from the director, Jonathan Lynn. John Landis thought it would be a really great box office. He thought what would happen was that people, having enjoyed the movie so much, would go back and pay again to see the other endings. The audience decided that they didn't know which ending to go to, so they just didn't go.
Yeah.
Which I honestly, like imagine trying to explain this to your mom. And I mean that in the
royal view.
the royal you. Like, imagine trying to explain, okay, so there's 3 different versions of the end of the movie, and depending on which one you go to, the movie ending is completely different. And so if you didn't like the ending, you could technically go again to a different one and see a different ending. Like, that sounds like gibberish.
It does. You're right. Yeah.
And the other thing that I think would, like, if you explain that concept to me in the abstract, I would think, well, the movie must not do a very good job of storytelling if by the end there isn't one obvious answer to the puzzle, and therefore maybe they're all bad, would be my instinct. And like, that it doesn't really matter because this is a comedy, you know what I mean? But if like,
it is, but it is so, I think that you would normally, like, if this movie were made today, it would, I keep seeing that they're going to reboot it with like Ryan Reynolds and bullshit. Don't get the fuck out of here. Don't you dare. But like,
I think he is probably the person who would most give a shit about this version of it to remake it. Just FYI, I agree with you, but I'm just saying.
Well, my friends and I were talking about like if we you know, because we play the game sometimes, like gun to your head, you have to recast this. Like, even though it's like this is something that like we already love as is, like Hocus Pocus. Like, don't remake it. But like if you had to, and I think we said that Catherine O'Hara would be a great Miss Peacock, and
it's surprising to me that she's not in this, to be honest with you.
it feels very her wheelhouse.
Like exactly the right time frame. Yeah. Anyway, back to some plot stuff here. So we have a bit of a scuffle, and the lights go out, just like in wrestling. And oops, Mr. Body's on the floor.
Mr. Body turns the lights out. Then there's a scuffle. He says,
"Yes." Well, there's also a Three Stooges fight. Yes.
Oh yeah.
That's right.
You're right. There is a Three Stooges fight where Madeline Kahn knees him in the woo woo.
Right. So I guess we didn't say that. We did mention out the weapons all get handed out, and that's the point where Lee Ving's character is like, if one of you kills Mr. Wadsworth, Tim Curry, then we're all out of here scot free. And he turns the lights off. Gunshot, lights back on. Oh, Mr. Body's on the floor.
Mm-hmm. But they can't figure out how he died because it wasn't a gunshot. The bullet is all the way over on the other side of the room, and they can't figure it out. And they're like, maybe he was poisoned, as Miss Peacock is like drinking the brandy. And so she has a freak out. Mr. Green slaps her and is like, I had to stop her from screaming.
At this point, it's revealed that Yvette the maid is next door listening into this conversation, recording it on a tape. Mm-hmm.
I was listening. That's another one I quote all the time.
So it's really hard to describe the plot of this because everything happens so quickly, but this is where we have one dead body. Christopher Lloyd examines Mr. Body. He's dead. We go talk to Yvette, and then we go find the cook right after that.
I think so they go back to the study, and then they say the cook, and so they all run to the kitchen where they discover the cook is dead. She falls out of the freezer, and someone says, who would want to kill the cook? And Miss Scarlet goes, dinner wasn't that bad. She's the best.
Yeah, she is very funny. I also love the part where Martin Mull is sort of examining her, and he goes, don't touch her. And then he proceeds to just wrap his hand around the knife handle.
And then Madeline Kahn does it. It's like a bunch of people do it.
Yeah. Which I thought, like I said, it'd been so long since I've seen this. I was like, oh, maybe that comes back into play later. No, it doesn't.
It doesn't, but it is a cool moment that you're like, oh, a lot of people touch it.
Right.
Then they get that. Then he turns on Miss White, Madeline Kahn. We get the classic line that men should be like Kleenex, soft, strong, and disposable.
Husbands
should be like Kleenex, soft, strong, and disposable. And flies are where men are most vulnerable.
So we go back. Mr. Body is gone,
and they're carrying the cook. Two at she's horizontal, 2 at her arms, 2 at her legs, and someone sees Mr. Body's gone, drops the left arm, and then the person holding the right arm goes and also drops that, and she just face plants.
It's a really solid thunk noise. Whoever was doing the sound design.
So Miss Peacock is like, I need to go to the bathroom, and then Mr. Body's body falls out of the bathroom at her.
This is one of my favorite jokes in the whole thing, which is, oh, she's gonna faint, and it's fall into my arms, and Mrs. Peacock just like
she limp
misses him.
She goes straight down.
Right. And then this is immediately preceded by her like trying to get angry, and the hat keeps flopping over her into her face, and so she's like fighting the hat and trying to get angry, and it's like an exact emotion I've had before, where it's like I'm just trying to open the valve and yell so I can just let it all out, and something is preventing me from getting my good yell going, and I'm like, and then you end up with the Joe Pesci of like, like, yeah, it's very good.
So Mr. Body is now officially dead. Tim Curry goes, I'm shouting, I'm shouting, I'm shouting. And then a vase falls over, or the candlestick falls over and hits him in the head. So he's knocked out.
Yes. It was propped over the door like the bad bucket of water gag that they do on children's cartoons.
Yes.
And in reality, it's just really dangerous.
Yes. And this is where we get the motorist that we alluded to earlier, whose car broke down and wants to use the phone.
So they lock him into the library.
No, it's the lounge.
Okay.
And they lock they have like a secretary's desk, is that what they're called?
A roll top?
Yeah, and so they lock all the weapons in there and they throw the key away.
I guess it's not a roll top desk. I guess it's just like a
it's just like
cabinet.
it's just like an armoire. I'm picturing it folding out. So they lock him in, and then Miss Martin Mull's like he looks into the study, and they're like, what's wrong? He goes, 2 bodies, we're all good here. And I love his pour of he starts to pour whiskey.
I was gonna say, yes.
It's like it's like a set with like the decanter and the glasses around it. And he pours himself. He goes, does anyone else want one? And it's general like, yeah. And he just like, it's just
waves it
at it, and it's just like pouring like a little kid making breakfast in bed. It's great.
Yeah. It's the way you would pour liquid into like a large pan, where if you're like, oh, I'm putting some soy sauce on this, or I'm putting some soy sauce on this pot of rice. Let me like shake, trying to spread it out. Except it's whiskey into glasses.
And then everyone starts fighting, and Mrs. White smashes her glass on the fireplace.
Yeah, it's lovely. The only thing that one of the very few things where I'm like, oh, you could have done a little more hiding, is if she threw it into the fire and it whooshed.
Oh yeah, they could have whooshed.
Yeah, would have been neat, but that's an extremely minor quibble.
And so they decide that they have to split up into pairs and search the house. So they're gonna, draw matches. But first, Yvette says, like, I'm scared of the dark. Will someone come with me? And Martin Mull and Professor Plum go, I will. And there's a beat. And Mr. Green just goes, no, thank you. And walks away.
Yeah. I do really enjoy this splitting up sequence where we start to explore the house. They get a lot of mileage out of like cutting the matches to size and then pairing off the people. The only thing I would say is I do wish that there was a little more house that we got to see, because the part of the draw of a Clue movie, I feel, is getting to see the Clue mansion, and we see most of it, but not all of it. And so Christopher Lloyd and Mrs. Peacock are in the basement. There's not enough secret passageway stuff, is what I feel. Like there's the one good secret passageway gag, but I feel that you need at least 2 secret passageway.
Well, there are 2
secret
secret passageways they explore.
Right, but I'm specifically saying like not just like, oh, there's a secret passageway, but like the gag of like the revolving fireplace, and then they find the dead motorist is a fun bit of business. I would have I guess maybe 2 you take away from both of them, but I feel like I could have had a little more of that to and enjoyed it as well.
I agree. So this whole set was a real mansion, except for the ballroom, which was a studio. And that's why only Mrs. Peacock and Martin Mull see it, because it wasn't actually part of the house.
Interesting. So did that door lead to like a pantry or something?
Well, I don't think you ever see the door. You only see it from inside the ballroom. You see them open it and come into the room. Like you never see it from the hallway. Got it.
But you do see the door, don't you?
I don't think you do, because it's like there's the staircase and then a lot of
it's like kind of behind the staircase.
It's like behind the staircase where like the kitchen area is.
Yeah. Okay. I was picturing it incorrectly.
Yvette is just holding her giant matchstick in front of her like it's a magic wand. It's a great bit of business.
Real Harry Potter energy. So these pairings are really fun. The actors in them are
smart.
really, really fun. And it's nice to it's basically what you have to do in your ensemble, which is like, all right, we got everybody. And it's like we got to let this breathe like a little bit before we wind the action down, because it's like we gotta figure this out. So I think they paired perhaps all of the pairings. I think are the most interesting versions of it. Like I could have seen other ones that worked well, but in this way, all of them are good.
Mm-hmm.
You know what
Definitely,
I mean?
for sure. A mysterious gloved hand destroys all the evidence that they were holding.
Right.
Takes the weapons and then kills the motorist. Mysterious.
Did you catch that the phone number was only 6 digits?
No, I didn't. Only 6?
The number on the phone is only 6. Yeah, phone numbers didn't get to their length that they are now.
I thought it was 7. I thought it was like 7 and then became 10.
I mean, the original phone numbers were single digits.
How? There were 9 phone numbers? 10, I guess?
Yeah.
0?
And then the 10th. Yeah, like they started assign, from my understanding of it, they started assigning numbers. It might have been 2 digits, but it was you started at 0, or 0 is the operator. So then 1 became a number.
Well, because I remember reading that for a while you didn't actually dial. That's why old phones are just the listen cone and the talking to.
Right, a switchboard operator physically would connect the two things with a line
and then listen in.
There's a really good movie on Amazon Prime called The Vast of Night, which is a UFO movie set in the 1950s.
Oh, fun.
It's highly recommend. It's very excellent. I might have written about it in one of our emails, but a lot of it takes place with a switchboard operator, and people call up and like, hey, I'm trying to reach Mary Lou Benton in Thomasville, and she's like, hold on, click, and then she like has to ring into a different switchboard operator, and then they're physically plugging and unplugging quarter-inch. Yeah,
those ladies.
No, they're plugging.
Yeah, that's the aux. It looks like they're giant aux cables.
They're aux cables. Yeah, they are. They're like click. But anyway, before I forget to finish the anecdote, when I was in high school, I was working on the yearbook as part of a class that I was in, and we were looking at old yearbooks, and there was a place with a 2-digit phone number in Downingtown, and it was like dial 55. And I was like, wait a minute, what? And then that's true. Like phone numbers slowly expanded.
I just know those wire ladies, they knew everybody's business.
Well, of course, yeah. That's part of Vast of Night is the listening in business.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think there's a Spanish language show about that. I think it's called Cable Girls.
Yeah, that's on Netflix, I want to say.
Mm-hmm. There's a great 4-way pratfall where Mr. Green, Yvette, Wadsworth, and Mrs. White are all running to the stairs, and all 4 of them just collapse and go like ass over tea kettle.
A big pile of arms and elbows.
Mm-hmm. Because Miss Scarlet and Colonel Mustard have discovered the secret passageway and then discovered the dead motorist, but now they're locked in the room because they had locked the motorist in the room and the secret passageway is gone. Apparently,
the phone numbers started with 4 digits, is this saying on here?
I mean, I guess that makes sense to you because all phone numbers are 334 now. So maybe they all had 4 and they're like, oh, we have too many numbers.
I assume no one is coming to this podcast for phone number history. So if we're wrong,
I mean, if you are,
feel free
tweet
to
at us and like, how did you find us for that?
But please go ahead and correct me if I'm wrong here. But okay, when telephone numbers were first used, they were between 1 and 3 digits and communicated orally to a switchboard operator. That's a solid source. I'm ending this quest there, and we're moving back to Clue.
So everyone's at the door trying to unlock it, and they can't find the key. So Yvette runs to the weapons cabinet and gets the gun and accidentally fires a shot up into the chandelier, and then just fires shots wildly into the door and says, "Come out, the door's open."
The overhead crane shot of the spinning chandelier wire as it slowly starts to go, so good looking. The only thing would have been better is if it did land on someone and we got a great dummy death.
Yeah, I don't think that's this movie.
No, it's not, but I would have enjoyed it. If only Canon had made a Clue.
Oh my God.
And they dropped a chandelier. I need a chandelier falling on someone produced by Canon Films.
The only other thing that I think would have made it cool is if they had done like a shot of, I don't know how they would have done it, but if it was like a top-down shot of the chandelier, like directly above, and the camera was spinning with the chandelier, so the room was kind of spinning, I think that would have been cool.
You could do that now. I'm not sure you could do that then. But yeah, it would have been cool as hell. So at this point, the cop arrives.
Because he discovered the motorist's car.
Right, which is hilariously hung up.
Yeah, it looks like you're on like the tram tour at Universal, and they're like, someone had a little car trouble, and it's like very clearly on like fake rocks and raised.
Yes, and one wheel is like slowly.
One wheel is
spinning.
just slowly going.
Just one. Yeah. Honestly, it looks like if you're ever doing video game driving and you're like you're trying to go up and down a mountain and you do the switchbacks to get up the mountain and then to get down the other side, you're like straight line.
Yes, it is.
And just floor it, and just sometimes you get hung up on a rock.
So everyone's nervous about the cop because there's a dead body. Mr. Green tries to like
two dead bodies.
3 dead bodies.
There's a lot of dead
cook,
people in this
Mr.
house
Body,
at this
and the
point.
driver. And Mr. Green tries to confess, and everyone's like, shut the fuck up, nerd. And so they lock the officer in the library, and Tim Curry says, help yourself to a drink, not the brandy, just in case, and shuts the door.
Just in case what? I also really like when Tim Curry shuts the door and locks him in, the door disappears.
The library is great. The door
bookshelf.
disappears.
Mm-hmm. So he's in there, and the phone rings, and it's J. Edgar Hoover, apparently.
Yeah. I guess that is also...
Which I guess is a good clue for what time
when
the
it
movie takes
happens.
place. Yeah.
So they're all like, we have to do something because the cop's going to get suspicious. So it is my favorite, like one of my favorite bits in this movie is this like these 2 little vignettes they create in the room. So they're like, we're going to hold the cook's body up and Miss Peacock's going to stick her arms through the curtain while Martin Mull makes out with her. And then
it's the gag from Whose Line Is It Anyway, or the improv game, which they haven't. I never did, which I assume is because they didn't want to make people touch each other who weren't familiar. But the person in front sort of does a Superman pose, and the person behind sticks the arms through. Yeah.
Mrs. White makes out with the dead Mr. Body, and then they cover the motorist in liquor and put a hat on him, and then Miss Scarlet and Professor Plum make out.
Yeah, it's very... And then the third one, Mr. Body, they just dumped whiskey
No,
all
that's
over
the motorist. Mrs. White's making out with Mr. Body.
That's right. But they just dumped a bunch of whiskey on this poor fella and stuck a bottle in his hand. Cop's like, he's dead drunk. And they're like, he sure is.
You're dead right. So the lights go back out again as they start exploring the mansion. And then Yvette gets murdered by a very throaty, whispering person.
Yeah.
And then the cop gets murdered.
I will say there is one moment in this movie where I was like, all right. And that's where Yvette the maid is running down the stairs. And it is shot in the most leering male gazy way possible. Like, this woman's wearing sort of like a bustier.
She's wearing the porn version of a French maid outfit.
Yeah, I mean, she's got like a corset. So like she is very cinched in,
she's
tight,
corseted,
and everything is up near her throat.
And the goodies are up and out and ready for display. And there's like a flouncy like ballet skirt.
But they make this poor woman like run down the stairs in heels, which is a very challenging thing to do. And they shoot her from between, like it's a chest up shot. So it's just this woman's breasts in the frame.
It's Colleen Camp, the mom from Valley Girl.
Right. Yes, it is.
She's
not the mom. She's not the mom. She is the Valley Girl.
She's Julie?
Yeah.
I don't think she's Julie. I'm pretty sure she's the mom.
No, Julie is in this movie. They came out like a year apart from each other.
Hold. Julie's mom is Yvette from Clue. It's my note from Valley Girl.
Okay. But Deborah Foreman is the actress who's in Clue. And Deborah Foreman is Julie.
No. Deborah Foreman's not Julie.
Well, I guess you're right and I'm wrong, but I must have been watching something else that Deborah Foreman was just in then.
It was, you know what you were watching? Grizzly.
Yep, that's what it was. Thanks. That's very helpful. That's exactly what it was. Yes, for the bonus episode coming later, we did watch the movie Grizzly. Thank you. Yep, okay. Now my brain is corrected.
Yeah.
Okay, we're all good then. But yeah,
so
anyway,
she showed up to the audition.
But that's the only part where I was like, okay, what are we doing here?
So she showed up to the audition in the maid outfit because she wanted the part so bad.
Nice.
I don't remember who the other 2 actresses are who were up for the role, but she was like, no, I want this. I'm going to show up in the stupid little maid outfit.
But yeah, she gets attacked, and the cop gets attacked, and then we have the scene that is burned into my brain for whatever reason, most specifically, which is I am
A singing
your singing
telegram.
telegram, and then the immediate bullet.
It's perfect. But there's this great like Morticia Adams light. So there's like extreme like almost crash zooms on every character in this Morticia Adams lighting where it's just a stripe of light across the eyes and everything else is shadow darkness.
Yeah, no, it rules. It's super creepy and super fun, but I do want to make sure we don't gloss over my sneaky favorite Tim Curry bit of business in this movie, which is when he goes into the shower and he thinks it's a door handle and douses himself right in the face. His little like whoa, sort of reaction of like startled and hands up to the face, like trying to protect yourself, and then like realizing what he's done and turning the shower off. Yeah, it's very, very,
and then
very
he's
good.
wet for the rest of the movie.
Right, yeah, he's this poor man. Like I was thinking about the logistics of Tim Curry needing to be wet for the rest of the movie. It's like it must have been 2 weeks where they're like, "All right, Tim, time to dump a gallon of water over your head." He's like a wrestler going to the ring.
And this is another one of my.
By God, that's Tim Curry's music. He's soaking wet.
I'm picturing it's Frankenfurter versus Legend with Wadsworth as like the announcer.
versus Pennywise.
Versus Pennywise.
It's a three-way dance.
So another again, I have so many favorite bits. All the lights come back on, and they like it looks like the hungover walk of shame after Halloween. Like it is that level of like tired, slow slog. And they like
it looks like you and me leaving our brother's 40th birthday the next day.
Yes, so many picklebacks.
It was just like we've made terrible choices.
So they all like slowly shuffle up to the cop or to Yvette, and they're like, and then they all slowly shuffle over to the cop and see he's dead, and it's just like, okay, and it's just no reaction at this point.
Right. So this is where this movie really
shines,
lands, and it's very good all the way through. I like this movie very, very much, and it was super fun to revisit it. But this is the part that I remembered, and it's, as I alluded to earlier, it is literally just Tim Curry basically throwing a lasso around the rest of the cast, putting the rope over his shoulder, and being like, "I'm carrying y'all the rest of the way. Here we go."
You better keep
and
up.
He's incredible in this last 20 minutes. You cannot say enough
It's a
good things about
masterclass.
this. You can think this movie sucks.
You shouldn't.
That's
How
fine.
dare you?
I disagree with you, but you can think that. But there is no criticism to be levied at this incredible bit here. Like he nails it, is totally, totally committed, and is the only reason this works.
Yeah, and I love the traveling music because every time they run, there's this like ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-da.
Little sting. Yep. It's very good.
There's some great lines. So-and-so, Mr. Colonel Mustard was walking in the door. I know because I was there. And then,
Yes.
to make a long story short, too late. Nah.
So he basically runs through the whole evening and recaps the movie that you have been watching by himself as a one-man play. And then we get to the part where we're committing crime. So
Throwing
is this when...
he's throwing Mr. Green around like a prop.
Yes.
He throws him in the bathroom and then runs away to like continue recapping. And then Mr. Green casually comes out. There's a flush sound, and he comes out like drying his hands on a towel.
And I love the part where Martin Mull has his hand out for a different reason next to Michael McKean there. And he hands him the towel, and Martin Mull does like, "Oh, thanks." And then he realizes what the towel is and is like, "What?" And just like hucks it back into the bathroom. It's a very good little thing between the two of them.
He reveals that Yvette is a murderer.
This is ending A, right? So we should
So
pause.
I don't know when technically ending A starts.
Okay. So I think that the divergent point would have to be
The bathroom.
He does this whole recap, the bathroom thing, and then there's the hard cut back to Tim Curry.
Yeah, that's probably right.
So we did talk about this earlier, but basically there's the original incarnation of this movie, which I guess it's about 93 minutes now. It probably would have been closer to 80 because
it was
you
short.
wouldn't have had.
Because, well, I think if you have the DVD, you can do random, and it will only play one random ending.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
Or you can play it how it is for most standard home releases, where it just is A, B, and then C, I imagine. So I don't know if, because C is the final one, I don't know if they like took like repetitive bits from A and B out, so that
they probably put, you're definitely right. There's definitely some of this stuff that's in all of them, but I still imagine you're looking at an 85-minute movie instead of 93 or whatever it is. Yeah. That's a perfectly reasonable length for a movie, but it's interesting. Yeah. So anyway, so this is ending A that we're going to talk about first here, obviously, and then we'll go in order.
Yvette is a murderer. She killed Mr. Body. And another great line where someone's like, I'm confused about one thing. One thing?
So it all of the endings lead to, well, whomever has the gun is the killer, and in this version, she pulls
Miss
it out.
Scarlet pulls it out of her purse. And this is where we get, like you said before, there's no bullets left in that gun. 1 + 2 + 2 + 1. No, it was one bullet fired earlier. That makes it 1 + 2 + 1 + 1. No, that's 1 + 1 + 2 + 1, not 1. Oh, shut up.
Yeah. And it's in the context hysterical. Like I remembered that was coming. I remembered the addition thing, and I was still laughing at it very much. But then I was just like, oh man, I've definitely like had this thought calculating a tip or doing or whatever. Like,
oh yeah, that's the perfect time to do it when someone's like, how much does that cost? And like 1 + 2 + 2 + 1.
Right.
So Miss Scarlet goes to escape, and then the cavalry shows up.
Cavalry. Yeah, all the cops come rushing in, and it's like at the end of Christmas Vacation.
It is exactly
like a swarm
that.
of cops.
So Tim Curry wrestles the gun away from her, and he's like, anyways, like I said, no bullets are left in this gun. And then one fires off at the chandelier, and Miss Scarlet has the best, like, I told you so face as soon as the bullet goes off.
And doesn't he start counting on his fingers? Okay. I can't.
1 + 2 +
Yeah.
And then
it's just again,
it's a great
you just
bit.
can't say enough good things. But I'm just talking about Tim Curry in this movie. Like I think Tim Curry is a really truly great actor who's been in a lot of different types of roles really really well. Hell, he's amazing in Home Alone 2.
Yeah, Home Alone 2 lost in New York.
A large cheese pizza. It's like it's absurd. Anyway, yes, that is the end of ending A.
Well, the chandelier, is that the chandelier or is that the second one?
I think the chandelier drops, and then it's like card comes up, and it's
that's what could have.
That's
happened.
one way it could have happened. This is another, and in this one, Peacock is there. Or Peacock is the killer,
and we get the monkey brain line.
Yes, well, the first of two monkey brains lines, which is not to go too far down a rabbit hole, but it's like a weird cultural thing of like Asian mysticism and weirdness that I read, and this is years ago, and it's probably no longer on the site because they're like BuzzFeedy now, but Cracked used to have like really interesting, funny articles that were researched, and they had a really good one talking about how full of links. Yeah. But I remember one really distinctly talking about how there's this whole, economy of weird news that's all attributed to vaguely Asia, and it's like this thing happened in China or whatever, and it's never super specific because it's all
doesn't say
hoaxy
Beijing.
bullshit.
It doesn't say,
Right, exactly. And it's this weird thing of like otherness where, you know, the culture is so vastly different than ours that like almost anything that happens there is believable. And so the things come out. But it's really fascinating to me that this one has the monkey brains bit, and Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom, which came out a year before, also has this. And that one is way more insensitive than this one. Yeah. But like the idea of like, oh, they're weird and eat monkey brains. This is like such a fascinating through line of the 80s.
Well, it's a very weird. So earlier when they're eating dinner, Mrs. Peacock specifically says, "This is one of my favorite recipes," and Tim Curry says, "I know." And it's revealed that the cook used to be her cook, and the meal that they were eating was monkey's brain, so popular in Canton. Oh, he says it's Cantonese cuisine.
Cantonese
cuisine is not commonly found in Washington D.C.
Yeah. Because the monkey brains are Indian in Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
It's a different thing, but it's just like a weird, and that's why I said, like, I am aware as a person that India and Asia are two very different places, but I was drawing a broad brush of the pastimes of like people just would put all that thing over there.
So what I really like about it is that the three endings are very different. It's not like they just plug and played like control F replace Miss Scarlet with Miss Peacock and it's the same ending because the response is completely different. Like Tim Curry is like active in the with Miss Scarlet, but with Miss Peacock he's like oh no, well we can just leave the bodies in the cellar and we'll leave one at a time and pretend we never saw each other, and like plays it off that way. And
the only overlap is that in all three the communism is a red herring.
Communism is a red herring.
Yeah. But I was trying to get to this earlier, and I think it makes more sense to talk about here anyway. In a movie that wasn't a comedy, or even in a movie that was a comedy, like using the mystery tropes and then not having a definitive logical ending sounds bad to me as somebody who enjoys a mystery story. Like I don't me personally, I know other folks, but I don't like your mystery to leave on an open-ended note. Like I want the mystery to be solved, because part of the way I personally enjoy those things is like I try to solve the mystery. I want to be the detective when I'm watching. And so a story written in such a way that there are multiple satisfying endings in the abstract sounds awful to me. Like if you were to tell me that there were 3 different endings for Knives Out, which, and I keep using that as an example, but it's just Knives Out has a lot more similarity to this movie than almost anything else ever released that I've seen. If you had gotten to the end of Knives Out and there were 3 alternate endings where different people were the perpetrator of the crime, I would be like, well, wait a damn minute. Like, well, so that's not what I want.
I think it works here because there is evidence planted in like, so each ending has like a few minutes of evidence before it reveals the killer. And in there is like, oh, the cook was Mrs. Peacock's cook, or like Yvette worked in Miss Scarlet's, hen house.
Right. Plus, it's based on Clue, wherein every time you shuffle the deck, it's a different 3 pieces, all of which end with a killer, a weapon, and a room. Mm-hmm. So it makes sense for this movie more than another place.
Oh, totally. And I think, so to go back to your multiple ending, I was in I don't remember if you were around for this or if you were in college, but I did a murder mystery like show. It was in a tea room nearby, and it was Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and there was a different ending each night, so that like you could come back multiple nights and play again, and like try and win a gift card for that tea house. They were like, hey, you can do it here, but we're giving away a gift card to make people come back.
Yeah.
I don't remember if you.
I didn't go to that, but that does sound cool.
It was fun. A friend of mine wrote it, and then this is one of my favorite theater stories. I ruined it for a bunch of people by mistake, because it's like there were it's like a restaurant. There's tables all around, and basically we would come down, mill around. We had a few scripted scenes that would happen, but like we could improv with each other, and like if tables hurt us, it would be in character, or whatever. But then we could go upstairs to like not be around any guests. And my friend, who was supposed to be the murderer that night, forgot the vial of poison that she was supposed to take out of her dress and drink and then die. She forgot it up in the green room. So I was like, oh shit, I have to she forgot this. So I had to I grabbed it and like palmed it and like tried to find like a secluded corner. And I was like, hey, and I like took her hand and put it in there. I was like, you forgot this upstairs. And she was like, oh my God, thank you so much. And then walked away. And then this table of my friends goes, what did you just do? What'd you just give her? And I was like, it's not important. Please don't. Please stop paying attention to this. And they were like, that's.
You had to break kayfabe. You were like, hey, stop.
But then they were like, that's exactly what the killer would say. Don't pay attention to this. And so she walks away. They see her drink the vial that I just handed her and die. And they're like, Andrew did it. Andrew did it. Andrew did it. And then they were like, she killed herself. And they were like, what? And I was like, I told you. Don't pay attention to that.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
So ending C is the movie's version of how it really happened. And in ending C, everybody is a killer.
Exactly. Which I like more.
I do too. Right, exactly. It's much more satisfying that all of these people had motive and carried out something. So this one, we see all sorts of connections drawn. Like the singing telegram was a former
patient of Professor Plum's.
Oh, patient. That's right. Okay.
The cop was on. The cop was on.
He was being paid off by
Miss Scarlet, Yvette was
Right.
killed by Mrs. White because she was stooping her husband.
Right.
The cook was the cook still Mrs. Peacock's cook?
I think so. Yes.
And then
I think that's in both.
And then the motorist was Colonel Mustard's driver in the war, who knew he was a war profiteer.
Right. And this one has quite a fun, like, Tim Curry is actually the bad guy in this version.
Yeah,
of it,
I don't
which
love
is-
that.
That's the part I don't like. Yeah,
It's the only thing that I'm like, no.
The other thing is, like, he's such a good chaos agent that making it like, oh, I'm this master tactician is confusing to me.
Yeah, it feels a little, I'm thinking about the plot of The Dark Knight too much, and nothing really
Yes.
makes sense.
Yeah, I enjoy him, not to bring the D&D alignment chart into this, but chaotic neutral
He's
is
very
much better for
chaotic
Tim
neutral.
Curry. Yeah, but I'm saying with this ending, he's not. He's chaotic evil.
Oh, yeah.
But in the version of, like, I would prefer him at chaotic neutral, but that's a pretty minor quibble.
I like when Curry is, like, with the cops. He, like, worked for J. Edgar Hoover in some of them.
Yeah, I would have been fine with that.
This...
He does make a meal out of his death scene.
Oh,
though.
of course he does. But so this here is the only improv line in the movie, and that is, I hated her so much. Flames is the only improv in the movie.
Is it the performance is ad lib or the whole thing A to Z? Is ad-lib?
It was basically like, hey,
Did she, like, forget her line?
No.
It seems like the performance seems like she's trying to remember.
no,
the
she's
next
trying
line.
to figure out what to say because they were like, she slept with your husband. That's why you killed her. Improv a thing. And so she did. And
interesting.
it's this like, my friend and I always joke that like, we imagine every day the director was like, hey, Maddie, did you like think about what you're going to say? And she's like, I'll do it on the day. And then they're like, it's the day.
Yeah,
and she's
yeah.
like, oh shit. So this is where we find out Mr. Green is an FBI agent and he shoots Tim
Yes.
Curry. And then my only quibble, he's straight in the end. Didn't like that. Let him be gay.
Yeah. I think it's supposed to be like, I am such a good actor. I fooled you. But I was like, there's nothing in it. There wasn't a part of the movie where, like, you seduced a man.
Yeah, that didn't
you know what I
happen.
mean? What was the point of it? Yeah. My final note of this is I wrote genuine hoot and I underlined it.
I wrote,
twice.
I fucking love this movie. That's my last note. So yeah.
I highly, highly recommend this. It is a genuine hoot. Like I said, I'm guessing 15 years
That's
since I watched
crazy
this
to
A to
me.
Z. Yeah. Well, like I said, it was on so much that I just never felt the need to go back and revisit it. It's like I fulfilled my quota of Clue because I watched it 32 times in parts.
Maybe, yeah.
Because it would be like, you'd catch it, you come home from school, you're eating a snack or whatever, and you throw the TV on, and it's like, oh, here, I'll watch an hour of Clue or the last 30 minutes of Clue or wherever
Yeah.
it was. So I saw this so many times, I just never felt the need to go back. I honestly, I hadn't watched Ferris Bueller in probably 10 or 15 years until just over the summer, it happened to be on TV, and I caught it and watched like the majority of it for the first time in a long time. And it was one of those movies I had sort of put on I always call it the snow globe shelf of like, this is a beautiful memory I can pick up and shake and look at. And then I put it right back over there instead of like, hanging it out with me. And I was like, oh man, is this movie going to bum me out now? Like, is it going to be something I really like and now I don't? And I was totally wrong. Like Ferris Bueller, I think still rules.
It doesn't bum
for a
me
lot of
out. It's
reasons.
definitely not my favorite John Hughes.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that more when we
We'll
do a
get
Ferris
there.
Bueller
But-
episode eventually. But here it was the same situation of like, oh, I saw it a million times. Like there's no reason to go back to it. And so we talked about the schedule, and I was like, it came out at Christmas time. Actually, we might be putting this out on the actual.
You like
day it
didn't
was
finish
released. It came
saying the word Clue. And I was like, Clue, let's do Clue. I want to do Clue.
Yeah, you'd been pushing Clue for a long time, and I was never like, oh, I don't want to do that. It was just like, we'll find a time for it because they've talked about that remake so much. But yeah, it's a wonderfully funny movie. Just
It's so
super
perfectly
charming.
executed.
Yeah, it really is. It really is a perfectly executed script to screen thing. I mean, it's just really, really fantastic. The only thing about it that I was like, I remembered differently is I remembered the house being something akin to what I said after I keep talking about Knives Out, a movie I really liked. But after I watched that, I was like, oh man, I would have totally loved to just like crawl in the screen and hang out in that house.
I want to live in that house. I want the dagger throne. I want to build that in thy new apartment.
That's a little creepy. It's a little bit creepy, but you do you. But I would say the mansion here is a little foreboding. I don't want to hang out in this mansion. I would be creeped out.
I
think
do in a
there's probably
Scooby-Doo sense.
Right. There is probably a van full of teenagers and a dog who are getting ready to bust in this house and rip a rubber mask off an old man, as far as I can tell from what I can see on screen.
There's also a great little moment.
Super duper recommend.
Unplanned. So as Tim Curry's, I think it's ending C, as Tim Curry's recapping things, he like grabs Miss White's hand, Madeline Kahn, and like starts to run up the steps, and she falls, and he just drags her for a few steps and then lets her go. And she's just like splayed out on the steps.
Yeah, that is a lovely little bit.
It's one of those movies.
Do you have any other final thoughts? Go ahead.
I love that you can watch it over and over and always notice like different little things. Like it's sort of like how I say I love to watch Hocus Pocus now by like, I'm going to pick a witch and I'm just going to follow her and focus on her because they're doing it the most. So you can like pick a person and be like, oh, I'm going to just stare at her in the ensemble scenes and see all the little bits of business she does.
Yeah. No, you could totally do that. Each of these people is basically their own protagonist for parts of it if you watch the movie that way. But as I said, I just can't say enough good things about Tim Curry in this movie. It's just really spectacular.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for listening to the show. Don't forget to head over to patreon.com/dissectingthe80s and see all the great bonus content on offer, including later this month, a full Back to the Future episode in the studio, not a live one. That'll be us. Back to the Future Part 1. That's right. We've done Part 2, Part 3, probably never, even though I love it very much.
We got so many April Fools, so many Leap Day ones on the burner that I don't know if Back to the Future 3 is going to get there for a while.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of people in line ahead of it. It's just
Poseidon
waiting.
Adventure.
Right. Oh man, Poseidon Adventure definitely was going to have to be an episode eventually. Anywho, don't forget to visit us on Facebook and at Twitter. We're at Dissect the 80s. We love talking to you there. If you haven't done it yet, how about you give us a present for Christmas and you review the show on iTunes or wherever you get it. But if you do it somewhere other than iTunes, take a screenshot, email it to dissectingthe80s@gmail.com. We read those on the air even when they're mean to us. So if you want to say something about the show,
make us feel better.
There's a place to
I'm
do
moving.
it.
I'm stressed.
I think we're all stressed. It's just generally a bad time to be alive on the planet Earth.
Yeah.
It's not the best time for that. Anyway, thank you so much for listening to the show. We will be back in 2 weeks with a movie I am super thrilled to watch and review, even though I have no background knowledge of it whatsoever. Santa Claus the movie, starring Mr. Progresso Soup,
but not Santa Claus with an E. Not the Santa Claus.
No, it's not the Santa Claus. The film's actual title is, I feel like I'm doing Who's On First. The film's title is all of these words I'm about to say. Santa Claus : the movie. It's all four of those words.
But it's not spelled C-L-A-U-S-E because Santa Claus is C-L-A-U-S.
Correct.
Yes.
But I'm specifying that it is Santa Claus : the movie. It's all four of the words are the title of this movie.
Starring Progresso Soup.
Yes. So really excited for that. That will supposed to be out on the 28th. We'll see if it comes out on the 25th accidentally. Sometimes we do things like that. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Sometimes Santa shows up.
Thank you so much for listening to the show. I have been Tripp Leno.
I will always be Andrew Leno.
Until next time.
Don't you forget about me.
Dissecting the 80s is a Chum Some of This production. Ow.